Great, thank you. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Welcome, everybody. Another Spartan Council election panel hosted by SNXweave. I'm Connor, and I will be moderating today's panel again. I guess let's go ahead and jump right into it. We will, as always, begin with introductions. Most of the questions are open for group discussion. A couple of them, and I'll call them out, will be for individual response. But again, we'll start with introductions. First question, please introduce yourself. Give a brief statement on what unique experiences or views you bring to the Spartan Council. Mithrandir, we'll hear from you first on this one.
Hey all, so I'm a recently joined CC. I'm working as a senior solidity engineer at Synthetix. So this is first time for me to also join in the election process. So I hope to bring some fresh perspective here, and yeah, happy to enjoy everything along the way.
Thank you, Mithrandir, and welcome. Burt, on behalf of snaxFrens, I assume, could you please introduce yourself and share your unique experiences? We cannot hear you. All right, let's move on to Millie while they resolve a mic issue. Millie, could you share your introduction, please?
Sure, thanks, Connor. Yeah, I'm Millie. You guys probably know me. I've been around the community for many years now. Contributed to various DAO positions within the protocol. This epoch in particular, I'm actually running for council as integrator. I'm building a front end on Base with a team as part of another application. But yeah, we're building integration on Base. I think Base is like a nice untapped opportunity, so we're going to be pushing Synthetix forward over there on Base. But yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Millie. Welcome back. Do we have snaxFrens audio working yet? All right, let's go ahead and hear from Fifa then. Fifa, your introduction, please. Please introduce yourself and give a brief statement on your unique experiences that make you a great Spartan Council candidate.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Connor, and thanks Weave for hosting. So I'm a longtime Synthetix community member and contributor. I contributed across a lot of the different aspects of the Synthetix protocol, from governance and V2, V3 over the last several years. And I guess that's pretty much the experience that I bring to the Spartan Council.
Appreciate that. Thank you, FIFA. Troy, can you please share your background and any unique viewpoints?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Troy. I'm also a CC at Synthetix. I've been on the team for about a year and a half, and prior to that, I was working on Quenta, basically all the way back to the Perps V1 days, implementing that as a front end. These days, I'm more focused on like our data analysis and infrastructure, as well as building out our SDK, which kind of acts as like this kind of like first light integration before we tend to like hand things over to our integrators. So I think like these like this experience gives me a kind of unique perspective of being a person who's like both worked on the protocol side and on the integration side. And I think that's like where a lot of our friction ends up coming from, as like, you know, aligning all of these stakeholders. So kind of have some perspective as a person who's seen both sides. And yeah, just like generally delivering data analysis, more kind of information, and like getting everyone well informed about the protocol. So yeah, that's the experience I bring.
Thank you for that, Troy. ML, could you briefly introduce yourself, please?
Hard act to follow. I am not a CC. I have been on the SC since 4 epochs ago. Also been working on some BD efforts. My background in crypto includes various business and product related roles at Anchorage, Copper, BitPay, Zcash. I'm still involved with Zcash. I'm on the board. I have a mix of TradFi, protocol, level, and enterprise crypto experience. I think what I have brought to the SC and will continue to do is number one, being very noisy about pushing for more data and more metrics on our decision making. And then also trying to bridge across our different stakeholders. So in particular across the different councils. That's me.
Appreciate your introduction, ML, and welcome back, Meb. What sets your experience apart?
What's going on, guys? So I've been a CC at Synthetix for just over 3 years now. I've been through the V2X saga, as well as into the V3 era now. So I've seen kind of like the whole holistic Synthetix experience, and I've been kind of brewed in the darkness with the OGs, aka the JJ. Put me under his wing 3 years ago, and now I've come to this point, and I think I can bring some kind of technical leadership to the SC and between the CCs and the SC, and kind of bridge that gap to maintain kind of a balance between shipping fast, but also staying on the security focused driven path, and also just making Synthetix one of the top tier protocols and keeping it the status there. That's me.
Thank you for that introduction, Meb. Let's move on to Cyberduck. Your introduction, please.
So I'm an OG in the Web2 world. I'm a PM, BizDev, a small dev agency owner. Have been a counselor for a couple of epochs, also previously on the Grants Council, currently also on the Tails Council, and also the founder of Spongely, which is a Tails overtime integrator, and hoping to integrate Synthetix v3.2 in the near future. That's about it.
Welcome back, Duck. Moss, could you introduce yourself and explain what makes your perspective unique?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm a CC at Synthetix. Been working here full-time for 3 months now. Prior to this, I was a smart contract engineer working at a company that was completely focused on DAO governance. So I had the opportunity to contribute to Aave, Nouns DAO, ApeCoin DAO, and a few other DAOs, as well as building a smart contract framework centered on governance from the ground up. And when I joined Synthetix, I was in charge of leading the smart contract development on the governance v3 upgrade, which is the code that's running the election now. And yeah, I'd like to join the Spartan Council to help kind of imbue some governance principles, and as well as just generally aid the protocol towards going in a better direction, but mostly trying to remove friction between various councils and CCs and parties involved, as there seems to be a lot. That's me. Thanks.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Moss. Do we have SNXFrens audio yet?
I believe so. I'll be coming in from my personal account so that I'm not troubleshooting live.
There we go. Sounding good, Burt.
Yeah, so I am here on behalf of SNXFrens. I am their spokesperson. SNXFrens is currently led by Lano, a community member you may know and love, who is a heavy user of the protocol and really comes from that kind of retail end user perspective. And then we have SynthQuest, currently going by Pi, I believe. SynthQuest has done a lot of Dune queries. He spent a lot of time on the Grants Council. And so we're bringing all of these perspectives, including my advisory services, where I've obviously had some experience kind of from the integrator side, and I'm a heavy user of the product. So we hope to combine all of these perspectives to have kind of a more complete decision-making process and keep each other accountable. So that's what you get with a multi-sig candidate.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Burt. And finally, Cav, please introduce yourself and give a brief statement on what unique experiences or views you bring to the Spartan Council.
Hey guys, I talk a little bit, but for the new faces, have been a CC for a while, maybe 3 years, heading on 3 years. Currently in the contributor lead role, which coordinates across the CCs and the multiple councils. I think we've made some progress in our governance changes. I think we still have some time to go. And I think the simplest pitch for me for Spartan Council is that I, even at my own cost, do what's in the interest of the protocol long term, and will be continuing to do that if I'm re-elected this epoch.
Thank you, Cav. Moving on to the second question. This one will also be for individual response. What brought you to Synthetix, and what has compelled you to stay, kind of building upon your introduction? Millie, we will hear from you first on this one.
Yeah, thank you, Connor. So I guess Synthetix was always very interesting to me, just because the primitive that it offers is something like you can't offer in like any other instance. Like you can't offer this sort of access to passive LPing to like various like margin engines, which is essentially a debt pool. Like you just can't do. So when I just saw that for the first time, it was like really interesting to me. Like drew me into DeFi. Basically, I've been hooked into DeFi ever since. Like that was basically my gateway drug to crypto. And so yeah, I think like the same things basically get me very excited today. I think realistically, like these margin engines have improved so much. There's just like there's still so much to improve on them as well. But realistically, like the state that we're at right now, we could already use the current infrastructure to build really competitive sort of applications, which is kind of like what I'm trying to do right now. But yeah, what is available right now is already good enough to do some really interesting stuff, and I just can't wait to see like what it's going to turn into in the next couple of years. Personally, I'm very bullish on like integrating like AI agents into like especially our type of AMMs, where we have like these lots of like knobs and levers that we have to pull to keep these like AMMs solvent, quote unquote. So like and like competitive and also safe for the LPs. So I think like AI agents could actually help a lot there to accelerate that. There's a lot of different approaches to how that could happen. But we could start with the most basic, which is like just the AI agents is giving recommendations to the council to manually make adjustments as it goes. So like someone like Caleb doesn't have to 24/7 monitor like the markets. But yeah, like all of the stuff that excited me 4 years ago still excite me a lot today. I'm actually even more excited about it now, actually. Like the more you dive into, the more you learn about it. The viability of it just increases every year, the viability of these products. So yeah, my answer.
Thank you for sharing, Millie. ML Pseudo, what has been your journey with Synthetix, and why do you continue to be a part of it?
So in I think late 2021, I was curious about how the protocol worked. Just curious about it, having structured some Synthetix in the past and outside of crypto. And so then I started modeling out how the staking and debt system worked. And then one of the past CCs, no longer with us, RIP, Rafa, so he essentially saw my work by accident and then recommended that I run. So that's how I first got involved. But I stayed because you might notice I'm the only female on the council. I do like the vibe. It's very sharp elbowed, but we ship. So through all of the noise and drama on Discord and everywhere else, I like that people focus on shipping and less on being worried about what other people think. I think it's quite unique to our culture. Yeah, so I vibe with that, and that's why I stick around. It's also 5 a.m. my time, and so if I sound crazy later, that will be why.
The cost of a globally distributed team. Appreciate your response, ML. Troy, what brought you to Synthetix and what has kept you engaged?
That's a long story, I guess, but I'll make it pretty short. So like before I was working full-time in crypto, I was like a data analyst or data scientist at a few kind of like major tech orgs, which is pretty terrible for a person like me. It's like pretty soul draining. You like I would produce all these like analyses and like spend a lot of time doing it, and then watch people kind of like decision makers like take that and make bad decisions with them. Everything is closed source, and like everyone's guarding their code, and so and then the other thing is like when I was in school, I studied statistics and actuarial science. So I kind of like studied like derivatives and how to like price, you know, financial products. And but I was like never compelled to join any kind of traditional financial like institution because like I'm not going to put on a suit and tie or whatever those guys require. So I think it's like the transparency and like writing open source code, open access to the protocols, open access to these derivatives, everything is like above board is always what kept me engaged with Synthetix. In addition to just like the amount of talent we have on the team, like it's amazing what we're able to accomplish with just like, I don't know, 20 or so people actually full-time contributing when a lot of these bigger organizations are kind of like huge and expansive, and actually I think in a lot of ways get less done. So yeah, that's what's always been like exciting about working at Synthetix and like why I will continue to contribute.
Thank you, Troy. Now let's turn to Cav. What led you to Synthetix and what compels you to stay?
I used to work in tech startups and as a founder and in much more regulated industries, and I got pretty frustrated with the pace of change of technology. And it was pretty clear to me that crypto was doing for money what like the internet did for information. And so I wanted to join a protocol that built open composable things. And I think Synthetix has powered or pioneered that in many ways. And I still believe in that. So I still believe in open composable financial rails in the future. I think Synthetix has got a great opportunity to build the derivatives or leverage layer for DeFi. I know other protocols optimize for other things. We do it the harder way, in a way that can be built upon and become infrastructure or become a platform. And so I still believe in that. I still think that's a huge opportunity. We've got a lot of challenges to overcome in order to do that in a competitive way with other solutions that are more centralized. But I still believe in that future, and it's an incredible group of people. And I think if we continue to evolve how our organization is structured and focus on launching things more rather than just building them, we can get closer to that future. So that's what keeps me here.
Appreciate your insights, Cav. Cyberduck, could you tell us about what brought you to Synthetix and what keeps you here?
Yeah, been quite a long time back in the OG days when Haven rebranded to Synthetix. I think I joined Discord back in those days, and it was one of the handful of few apps or protocols that was actually building something unique back in the day. Many were just writing white papers and raising money and not delivering anything. And I still remember the thrill of my first SUSD mint and how excited I got for DeFi because of it. So yeah, that's what kind of brought me over here, joining a decentralized organization and being able to interact with the folks in the Discord and help shape the next iteration of Synthetix. And that is what has been keeping me around for long, and it was always a pleasure to be on board. And many perp products have launched since then, and I think the pivot to becoming a liquidity protocol or liquidity layer is what compelled me to stay, other than the round trip journey to $28 and back. and I truly believe V3 is a great product, and I really hope it's going to bring other financial products to be built on top of it, not just perps. So I think I'm excited for that kind of future as well. Yeah, that's it.
Well put, Duck. Thank you. Let's move on to Burt on behalf of snaxFrens. What brought you to Synthetix, and what compels you to stay engaged?
Yeah, so I think what brought me personally to Synthetix, along with the other members of snaxFrens, or the actual members of snaxFrens, is like the possibility here, right? Synthetic assets really intrigued me. They can be anything. I, like many others here, wanted to move all of my money off chain, and I think snaxFrens kind of embodies what's keeping me and keeping all of us here, right? When I discovered Synthetix, it was this kind of radically participatory open system with everybody jumping in the governance channels, and I'd never seen anything like it, right? The fact that, for better or worse, the community comes in and really helps drive the protocol, and is one of the most important parts of what is being built here. So in that vein, I think what keeps snaxFrens around is the idea that we're kind of participating in this and trying to push forward this kind of radical inclusion and participation, and use that as a strength for the development of the protocol through community.
Thank you for sharing, Burt. Fifa, what has been your journey with Synthetix, and why do you continue to be a part of it?
Yeah, I guess mine also goes back pretty far. But probably the first thing that brought me to Synthetix was definitely like the community at the time. I mean, there wasn't a ton of stuff in DeFi to kind of go and play around with outside of like Maker and Compound. But Synthetix kind of had an edge over a lot of the others because they were embracing iteration, and the community was very aligned on that. And you could come and show up in the Discord, and there was a lot of people who were very creative and all interested in the same things and kind of guiding that iteration. I think we still do that to this day. And I think that's why I like to continue to stick around. Like for a long time, very early on, I think Synthetix had a good reputation for like attracting a lot of the sharper minds in the space. And I think, yeah, that's why I like to continue to stick around. It's a good philosophy, and it's very interesting, and it keeps a good vibrant community, and I think we just need to continue focusing on that.
Thank you, FIFA. Now let's turn to Meb. Meb, what led you to Synthetix, and what compels you to stay engaged?
Yeah, so I think I was also working in Silicon Valley for a while before, the 2016 days, and then kind of got involved into crypto, and then was doing a bunch of like ETH global hackathons, and rather than like starting another startup and doing another Oracle protocol or something, we ended up getting poached by David Goldberg into Synthetix, and was helping build like this is pre like OVM 1.0, and we're thinking about cross-chain, and the messaging system there and how it's evolved since then is pretty wild, and we got to build up from 0 to 1, like a bunch of cross-chain stuff, so that was cool. What compels me to stay is probably just like mostly the culture, honestly, and the people. We have some really, really smart, talented people in this small cohort that is chronically online, and I love them all. And I really think that it's just a matter of time before we can, we've already built some pretty cool stuff, but I think with the amount of talent and intellect here, and knowledge and expertise and diversity, I think we have a killer team. So I think that's what keeps me here.
Diversity.
Skill set. We have one woman couple, but I meant like skill.
Just kidding. I got it.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll work on that. But other than that, people have been awesome.
Thank you, Meb. Let's hear from Mithrandir. What brought you to Synthetix, and what compels you to stay?
I always wanted to join a crypto native blue chip DeFi protocol. I enjoy DeFi a lot, and since DeFi summer, always tried to do it on the side, but never had a chance. And then after some earlier jobs, I saw an opportunity at Synthetix, and when I joined, I was really happy to see that the team is really good and exceeded even my expectations, which were high. And what compelled me to stay was because I'm learning a lot, not just coding wise, but also all the processes of the DAO are interesting, like the elections, the governance, how things are done, the communication, the culture. I'd say the culture is the most interesting thing, because just hanging out on the Discord and doing the calls, it's not like a regular Web2 call, but it's like very, very engaging. Just reading all the messages and listening to everything, and like it's the thing I always wanted to do, and I'm really happy to have great people to work with, and I think the great products can also built in this way, and will make Synthetix great again.
Thank you for sharing, Mithrandir. Moss, what brought you to Synthetix, and what compels you to stay?
Yeah, so similar to Meb, we were actually working on some like cross-chain protocols back in the day when layer 2 started to crop up, and I almost got poached by David Goldberg, but I wasn't quite ready for the position, so I didn't get it, and I spent the next like 3 years just grinding and in the Solidity dungeon working on various projects, and finally I got my opportunity to come back to this organization. I've known people here. That's not sure I can count them. Who worked here, and I've only heard great things, and now that I'm here, it's like Mid said, exceeded my expectations, and I'm just happy to be building products like on the frontier of DeFi. I really just like shipping and contributing to things, and Synthetix is a great project, and the fact that it's still around is attesting to that. And yeah, what's kept me here, obviously I just joined, so I haven't really had to think about that, but I'm here and crushing it, so yeah.
Thank you, Moss. Moving on to our next question. This question will be open for group discussion. In your view, what does Synthetix need to do to maintain its DeFi Blue Chip status? Again, this is open for group discussion.
At least from my point of view, I think we need to innovate constantly. We can't get left behind and like release products and like miss the hype train and kind of wait too long. I think we need to constantly be at the forefront, shipping, but also don't ship broken stuff. Let's like worry about security. Let's keep our values, keep our ethos. We're all here for a reason. Money's nice. It's, token price go up, but let's keep shipping and we'll get there. But let's not sacrifice our ethos in the process.
Yeah, so I have a really interesting take about this, and actually, I think realistic Synthetix should just continue doing what it does and survive. One thing Synthetix has been really good at is risk management over the years. We managed to what Synthetix did with the endogenous collateral of minting budget debt against SNX. For the most part, the industry kind of looked down on that. They think that that's not legitimate. Having minting liquidity against some endogenous token, people don't like that. And so I think what Synthetix actually did was prove people that you could do that very safely if you just do it. You could get it done if you just do it very safely. And I think that's a testament, right? The protocol, essentially the liquidity within the protocol has shrunk by over 95% since February 2021. And so from that perspective, we did a really good job of proving this concept out. Another area Synthetix has really pushed the industry forward is the Oracle space. the protocol, the contributors here, like I'm not gonna try and take any kind of credit for this, but all the core contributors and all of our integrating partners, and the protocol as a whole has basically pushed the Oracle space like forward, very far. First with like Chainlink, and then now with Pith, pull oracles. And so I think like Synthetix is doing all the right things. Kind of just gotta like weather the storm, because a lot of these other projects like that are really hype right now, they have kind of good UX, but they have a lot of compromises that Synthetix doesn't make in the same way. Like Hyperliquid is very, very, very centralized, like way worse than like a single sequencer type of centralized. More like 4 private keys control like the deposit and withdrawal of funds. They're like it's a minimal spec like BFT protocol. Like to have a functioning BFT chain, you need to have like 4 validators minimum, and that's exactly what they have, 4 validators running the chain. And so like they have this whole like system that it doesn't really scale. And so like, but they managed to get with like a lot of like good go-to-market strategy, like get a lot of users. But I think like these things are eventually gonna like, they're gonna be sore points that are just gonna cause the protocol to shrink over time. And Synthetix sort of went through that whole shrink phase where, like all the constraints, all the limitations, like going through scaling, like having to choose a scaling solution and all that. Like it went through everything. Like that process is matured now. So like, I think like it's not obvious right now, but all of these like constructs are just like converging on one basic way of like having this on-chain liquidity with like an off-chain order book, and a sort of combination of both to like optimize for efficiency and liquidity. And basically like we've sort of like pioneered the liquidity part. We're a little bit behind on like the order book part, but once we catch up there, we'll be almost at feature parity with basically like centralized exchanges and all these other like very centralized sort of different perp deployments. So like I think if Synthetix just keeps like shipping the way it is and just sort of weathers the storm of like bear market and all this hostility of like whatever's what's happening, but like if we get through all this, I think it's bright skies on the other side for Synthetix.
I think we have a good product, good culture in some ways. But I do think we also have this grandfather of DeFi reputation. But the problem with that is increasingly, I think the emphasis is on grandfather being old rather than having legitimacy as very early innovators. So I think like one solution to that is to go out there and integrate with a wide variety of protocols. We need to get back on the hype and hustle train. I think that's critical for us to maintain such a status, because I think we're kind of being grandfathered.
We need killer apps, to be honest. And it's good that we're becoming a liquidity layer where different apps can integrate with. The more opportunity we give to integrators, and the better chance we have at finding that killer app. Maybe it's Quenta, maybe it's Infinix, maybe it's TLX. I mean, much love for TLX. Their launch was awesome, I think, and the product is great. So I think if somebody builds a killer app with a killer UX, I think that is going to not only give us back that blue chip status, but make it more shiny.
Yeah, and part of that is just better encapsulation of V3, because right now we have a questionable integrator and dev UX, frankly. So I think better encapsulation of V3 will ease a lot of integrator pains, and we've taken a couple of CCs on from previous integrators, and I think they have a lot of ideas of how we can improve going forward. Also, Caleb's leaking token stuff in the chat.
Yeah, I think I agree with Meb here that and really like a focus not just on making integration easier, but I think from a governance perspective, like understanding what the end product looks like a little better is probably a good move for Synthetix governance. One example is like the recent conversation about implementing Chainlink oracles. I think one of the things that frustrated me about the conversation is there people kind of wanted to be agnostic and let integrators decide, but I think that really ignores the fact that like we have, it's zero sum with OI. We have to actually decide as Spartan Council how much OI to allocate to a certain market. And so to say we're just going to let integrators decide is realistic, right? We have to have a vision for the end product and how it's actually going to look for users. And if we think that, this one path forward is going to be the best for users, we should really push that vision. And I think having that cohesive view of what products are actually being created will help us make more effective decisions.
I feel like we are very fragmented with all of our products and very different, like similar sounding names of tokens, stablecoins, which are very related and historically connected, but for someone freshly learning about the protocol, it's very confusing. So some consolidation would help a lot in like bringing some new people on the side. So I think that's one point we should consider as well.
Thank you, everybody. Anybody who has not weighed in yet have anything else to add on maintaining Synthetix DeFi Blue Chip status?
I guess one thing, I'll just echo what Meb said. Innovation is super important to be viewed as like a leader and an innovator, but like I think safety and responsibility is arguably even more important. Like Uniswap and even Aave, which has had some scares. I think there's a really short list of protocols that have been around for multiple years and managed to never really have a critical issue or a really big stain on its name from some kind of incident. And I think upholding that for Synthetix going forward is like just as important. Like you have to do both. So it's not innovation at all costs, and it's also not stagnation for the sake of safety. So it is about finding a balance, but safety and responsibility definitely always needs to be prioritized. I think that's probably one of the biggest things Synthetix has going for it right now still, is that it still has a lot of trust with a lot of users in the space. Sometimes, we don't manage that super well, but I think compared to a lot of other protocols out there, like Synthetix does the best job or is among the best in terms of maintaining trust.
Excellent point. And thank you, everybody, for sharing your perspectives and thoughts. Moving on to the next question, also open for group discussion and debate. What do you believe are the biggest pain points in the Synthetix protocol environment that need to be addressed in the short term by this council and possibly supported by other councils? Again, open to the group.
I think we're all aligned on the fact that we need to ship much faster and more products, and I think we need to align on eliminating the friction that's blocking us there, aligning CCs and the SC and various other things along those lines. But yeah, we need to be more active, and also marketing.
Yeah,
I know one.
Echo that. Oh,
Go for it, Troy.
To echo that. I think like we've kind of like spread our focus across way too much surface area right now. So like instead of being like focused on outcomes and then figuring out what we need to do to get us to those outcomes, and to kind of like set some like clear indicator that will say yes, like we were successful, like generate a lot of fees or have X number of users, or like have in progress or complete like a certain number of integrations or like a variety of integrations. Means that we've kind of like diluted those goals, and it's been difficult to attract like users and market share and integrators, I think, because of that. So I think we actually have some like hard conversations to have about how to focus the roadmap around some things in particular, like fees or users or things that actually sort of like drive mindshare. And the other, I think, is like we need to like simplify and actually improve the narrative around the token itself. So we've got a lot of like baggage, I think, from the V2 system that we actually have an opportunity to kind of like reinvent right now. The value capture and like how it participates in governance. Like a lot of these things have changed, but I don't think we've really got a lot of alignment on like what that should look like. So I think like those two things, in addition to like that like on-chain governance is like quite a bit closer, and we've made more progress towards governance, but we've kind of had some of these like these ideas that have like dragged out a little bit between councils because like no one is really willing to, I think, like put their foot down and say like either this thing is done, like we're not talking about this anymore, we've decided, and they just kind of like sit in limbo. So I think like, you know, the biggest like thing we could do in the short term is actually align and focus and like scratch things off of this list and figure out like exactly what our actual sort of like North Star indicators are. More central planning, according to Matt.
I have one more. I think we've talked plenty about coordination having much headroom for growth, but I think the other thing that we don't focus enough on is the fact that we could face more existential financial risks. Our protocol is becoming more complex. We have deployments on separate chains. At any point in the future, we probably will decide to try and consolidate them, interoperability, more features, order book, but we don't have a systematic risk management system. Right now, that system is called KALEB, but it's one person who unfortunately needs to sleep. We really don't have a system, at least not one that I, having been on the SC for the last couple of epochs, feel comfortable with. And I think we have seen that it's resulted in some really confusing times on whether we do certain things or not when markets get stressed. So I just want to point that out because it doesn't seem to be at least on anyone's priority list for this question.
Thank you, ML. Meb, sounded like you unmuted your mic when Troy began speaking. Did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think the main point I was just trying to get across was I think the previous epochs, we've been seeing a lack of. I know Cav's been kind of saying also for a while that like we just need more interested and more involved council members. So I think that's why this epoch, a lot of the CCs decided to go for nominate, and I think it kind of aligns with like people that are, stakeholders that really want to see the protocol succeed, who are in the trenches every day. I see these guys working hard. Like, everybody that's pretty much nominated here, I can speak for. So I think this epoch is a good epoch to kind of close that loop where the Spartan Council isn't just like a rubber stamping thing, and the CCs kind of go on their own. I think as we move closer to on-chain governance and decentralize the protocol further, the plans were to give the Spartan Council more actual power of putting SCCPs on chain and eventually maybe even SIPs. So I think with this epoch, we should march closer towards that goal and start, giving the Spartan Council more responsibility and involvement before, things get shipped, and kind of how it's been keeping the SC and the CCs separate. Want to break that barrier down.
Yeah, honestly, I want to really echo what Troy said. I really feel like we are getting to a point where we're kind of stretching very thin across different deployments. I think we should sort of like reassess how far we're going with some of these deployments, how far we expect to scale them, because like every single deployment we have is not just like deploying and leave. It's literally deploy, incentivize, liquidity, especially like if we're not using like just like plain USDC derivatives or USDC variations. We're basically going to have to use like some CDP model where we mint a stablecoin, and we don't even have one deployment right now that in V3 that has like a scalable sort of stablecoin yet. So like trying to do that across many chains will be like, that'll backfire very quickly. So like we kind of have to assess like how much liquidity we could create for these things, and like how much further we go. So I think right now, like with this whole Snax governance chain, a potential Solana deployment, like the ARB deployment, the base deployment's already live, migrating the OP deployment, the big perp on L1, like it's a lot going on. Like, and it's not just like I know the CCs are like rock solid, they might be able to live up to that, but like it's also about the incentives and like for like liquidity and the various parts of those like deployments to make sure they function like orderly. And so yeah, like I think we're definitely at a point where we kind of want to like rein it in and sort of like scale up like our existing deployments and just like really focus on what we have going right now. Yeah, not saying stop shipping, I'm just saying like we start to focus our resources on like the existing deployments and shipping for those.
I mean, on that, just to add on the last thing you said, like it really goes to something that Cav has said, and that I've also said before, which is that like shipping doesn't always mean just like delivering the product. Like, oh, it technically exists on this blockchain somewhere. If somebody is like, able to like hunt it out, like we really should like align on that shipping really means like the products are usable. There's lots of people who can use them, and like especially from the Synthetix perspective, that integrators have like a really easy time with this. Like we've got initiatives around improving our technical documentation and like kind of like stimulating this experience of what it's like to actually come into like start a brand new integration with Synthetix. And like we really need to I think we really need to like clarify these things and make sure that like this is how we define shipping. Like this is our like North Star for success, not just like, oh, there's more contracts somewhere, so we did something.
Thank you, everybody. Anyone have anything else to add? I would like to hear from Cav if you have anything else to add, in your capacity as the core lead and returning Spartan Council member on this subject.
Yeah, for sure. I think we, for a lot of, say, last year, had a governance structure that ended up being quite extensive. We had 4 councils, we had 20-something councillors, and I think over time that structure didn't serve us very well, and it didn't allow the councillors plus 3 elected core contributor committee members the closeness required for decision making and conviction and focusing on a few things. And the top of the funnel was really big, and it meant that the core contributors was a lot of parallel actions. And I think we felt that pain quite clearly. I think over the past 4.5 months, I think I've been contributor lead. I think we've made a lot of progress in changes to the CCs. We've hired a lot of good people. Some of the people that didn't connect that well or their time was up have been moved out. And so I think this has taken a little bit longer than we would have all liked, but the consolidation in the core contributors has improved our ability. I think we've got better at pushing, the core contributors got better at pushing back at the Spartan Council level when the top of funnel gets filled with more work. And I think more Spartan Council members who are actively engaged in their contributors is a good thing. So I'm optimistic to see a lot of council members running. I do think we still have some way to go in our governance structure. I'm hoping the Spartan Council this epoch can think about how it's structured, because at the moment it does feel a bit too distant. I think one person in the contributor lead role, I think, has been partly a success, but I don't know that this is the ultimate solution. So I'm looking forward to digging into that with the current the future Spartan Council, whether I get elected in or not. But I do think we need some change to further consolidate the distance between the council members, the contributors, and the decision makers to behave more like a startup. I think we've figured out, we've seen some progress with that. We've figured out how to behave like a startup somewhat at the core contributor level, and I think we should extend that across to the protocol, because having a sprawling council mechanism is good for some things, but it's not good for conviction and shipping, which is really what made Synthetix great. So that's a little bit of a ramble, but I do think Synthetix is a startup. It hasn't found product market fit yet. It doesn't make more money than it spends. So we definitely are still a startup, and we should be acting like one. So hats off to the Spartan councillors, as an example, who voted on things in the last week or so, instead of just waiting for the new epoch to roll over. That's the kind of attitude that we need to take forward. So yeah, I think that's a quick wrap on that. The role of contributor lead will come up for re-election, I think, in a month or two or so. And so we can, the Spartan Council can decide if there's a better fit person. But until then, I think we've made a lot of progress, and we're starting to look like a startup again. And I'm super bullish on this next epoch.
Thank you, Cav. Very insightful. Moving on to the next question. It's about base. What are your thoughts on how the V3 base deployment went, and what was learned from that deployment, and how can that information be used to improve future deployment strategies? This question is also open to discussion, and anybody can chime in.
Yeah, I feel like I must have inspired this question, because I've been kind of a little bit critical of like our base deployment. And I think realistically it didn't get the sort of care it deserved. Not because of like the chain. The chain is irrelevant. I think like as a V3 deployment, we didn't put enough effort into like scaling one up, and like the time we launched it was actually quite opportune. Like we launched it at a really good time. Like it was one of those times we actually timed our launch very well with the market. At the time, base was just really good. There was a lot of activity there, and it was pretty successful at first. Like the LP was decent. We didn't like put the effort in to like really scale that up. We were immediately started like shifting that resources and sort of to other like areas like Arbitrum. So I feel like it just kind of got neglected, and it just been like, the market also, since like when we deployed it, has also been like the sentiment has changed, and so like the activity has a little bit died off a little bit more, and so like the dynamics changed, and so that deployment really got the short end of the stick, I feel like. So yeah, like it is our working V3 deployment. V3 is a lot more stable than V2. Like even we get a lot more volume on V2, and I suspect it's because of just the fact that SNX stakers have SUSD on Optimism to trade, versus on base it's like USDC traders that have to show up. So I think like that's why Optimism still gets a lot of volume, but base deployment is like objectively more stable, like just better overall. So I think like, yeah, we realistically, like, I think is a good thing that we have base sort of like very simplistic as like just like this USDC sort of derivative type of environment, and I think that makes sense. But I also think like it's just like a very easy opportunity. It's a chain where like there's no other perp decks, no other legit like real perp decks. Like we're the only ones there. There's like this other one which is kind of like very small, and then there's also like, and then on Arbitrum there's like 5, like there's more perp decks than meme coins basically, and there's like 5 big ones. And so like, yeah, I think like there's opportunities everywhere. Like Arbitrum does not say that it's not a bad place to deploy. It probably is, but it's probably a really good place to deploy. But like, just like base didn't get the care it deserved, and just like I'm not trying to blame anybody, but I just think like this is like leads into like us like not spreading too thin in the future, and just sort of like making sure we are giving care to the deployments that are live, because basically these deployments are like LPs sitting in these pools, and so sometimes it could be the TC helping out. But a lot of times when it's a user, it's like they're not going to stick around if it's not a competitive product. Like this isn't like we're not like it's not like it's just SNX liquidity where it's just dormant, right? Token holders with dormant liquidity, just letting people trade against it. This is like people have to show up with like other assets, and so in that case, like, it has to be compelling for the LPs. And so like if we don't put that care into each deployment, you know your LPs are not going to stick around if like it's not competitive. And that's just what we saw with the base deployment, right? Because even though the yield is decent, it's more than Aave. The counterparty risk is significantly more, and it's like and yeah, and so like it's, and I think like we're not in a bad place. It's just that you know, base obviously sort of got a little bit short on the stick, but like it's not that bad. Like we're still okay, right? Like if we just like focus our resources and channel them in, we should be we're actually in a really good place for the next epoch. So yeah.
Yeah, I want to kind of halfway agree with Millie here. I know me and Millie have kind of disagreed on whether or not base or Arbitrum is the primary place we should focus, but I think I 100% agree with Millie's idea that one of the things we need to do as we move into this upcoming ARB launch is make sure that we're really maximizing the launch, right? Talking about moving over to Snax Chain or moving over to Solana right away and like shifting focus, I think is going to hurt us if we can't just absolutely crush one of these deployments that we already have. I also think in terms of like what went wrong with base or what hasn't quite gone right yet, since base is still live and we can still continue to work there. Some of it's from the integrator side, and I think it's like understanding the challenges for the user and for integrators is going to be important to figure out how we maximize success on Arbitrum or on base. Like one of the things I'm thinking of is, all right, Quenta, I would have loved Quenta to release isolated margin support. That's something that from a product standpoint is very important for me as a user. And instead of working on that, like we're working on, getting Arbitrum live right now. There's this, multi-collateral aspect, which I think is very, very valuable, but probably actually not as valuable as implementing isolated margin. So trying to figure out what the actual product priorities are that we can bring to the users and like give people a packaged product that is actually nice to trade on. I think is one of the things we should do to make sure that future integrations are a success. Like we're not going to be successful by simply having 5 different deploys that are all kind of half-assed and not great to use. If we have one product that's really incredible to use, we will make money with that.
Thank you, Burt. Just want to
I think-
interject. Yep, ML, go ahead, and then I want to hear from
Connor.
Cav first before.
I think
you guys
zooming
go.
out, whatever deployment we're doing, we need to get better at running experiments. Like I think we still do have this approach of like build it and it's a great product and they will come. Add some marketing, but I think if we start being more disciplined, maybe in line with Troy's focus on data, etc., we can monitor things early on before it's too late. Like we should set up preemptively like metric targets where if we don't hit them, we by a certain date we ring the alarm, we sound the alarm, and then say, hey TC, we need to throw more at this situation. I don't think we've, at least from what I've seen, we haven't actually done something proactively like that. And part of it may be resource, people stretched thin. I think another part is just a habit of being more I guess quantified with how things are going. It's something I have asked for pre-launch on the SC maybe 2 epochs ago or something, but we didn't really see that happening as the launch was happening. Yeah, just wanted to throw that in, and then I will bounce.
Yeah, I want to add on to that, like exactly what I had for this question is that like we called base an experiment, but we didn't really have, and this comes back to something I mentioned before, like we don't have really clear outcomes of what we're looking for, or we don't have really clear like metric or something that we are measuring. And like every good experiment needs like both, you know, a hypothesis and actually like you need to be like, you need to know what the thing is that you're measuring. And I don't really think Base had that ahead of time, even though we said like this is an experiment. So like, you know, I think one thing that we're sort of like failing to acknowledge here is that the base deployment was the first like fully featured LP and perps version of Synthetix v3 that got a lot of use. And that's actually like massive and like needs to be acknowledged regardless of whether we think the deployment itself is falling short on what we like wanted to see happen. But I think like, you know, in the future, I think if we are going to say, hey, we're doing this, it's experimental, etc., we should be asking ourselves like, what is the outcome that you're looking to measure, and like what is your hypothesis? Like, why do you think that this would work? And we can test those things. Like, unfortunately, it's actually quite hard to do on a blockchain because, you know, it's really hard to like create a real control group and like, I don't know, all the stuff that comes with running real experiments it's actually like quite difficult to do in such a, like an open environment where like a lot of, you know, Web2 orgs might be able to like segment their users a bit easier or do something else that way. But yeah, that's what I would say like in relation to this experiment is like, one, it's like a huge success because we had like a fully featured V3 deployment and a lot of people used it and it attracted a bunch of TVL. But like on what outcomes we're actually looking for, I think we weren't really it wasn't like so clear what the criteria for success was with this project. And so I personally am like kind of with Millie in thinking that we should like refocus around this and at least do some work to like compare it to the Arbitrum deployment and say what is the like additional overhead that we have and what are the kind of restrictions that we have, because you know we have like a USDC based deployment versus one where we have to go and there's all this overhead with like liquidity and incentives and the stable coin and whatever, and like really think about this and how it impacts things like regardless of what the metrics look like. I think at this point this is a little bit more of like a strategic and kind of like overhead and where we put our focus decision to be made, like as it relates to Base specifically or Arbitrum.
All right. Anybody else want to chime in before we move on? All right. Switching gears a little bit. Next question. What are your thoughts on Snax Chain, both currently in the future? Millie, we'll hear from you first. I know you were very vocal in the original presentation.
Yeah, I think for like governance, it's okay. I think like deploying anything more there would probably be a big mistake. So yeah, I would just say like we do not devote a lot of resources to that. We just sort of chill back. And as we just saw today, like just today, Optimism released this like a ZK proof system for their rollup. So like, let's not rush into like building anything for this chain. Like Optimism could just like change stuff on a dime, and all of a sudden we'll be like our next like a regenesis moment for us again, like pre OVM and all that. So yeah, I think like no, we definitely want to take it slow there on terms of like what we're doing on our own chain. Like let's ride the coattails of like these already scaled deployments and sort of like let's just you know where we already are and just like improve there. So in terms of governance, I think it's okay. I just think we shouldn't really do much more at the moment in regards to it.
Hard disagree on that. I think we have a lot of momentum there with Wormhole and Optimism extremely excited to support us and be like a premier.
Right. The grants, of course. Yeah.
Not just the grants, but it's also another opportunity for us to experiment and really kind of create a home for our protocol, and in the long run, you know, create a DeFi oriented chain. And we can't get there without putting DeFi on the chain.
Yeah, I
Yes,
think I kind of agree
I
with that.
don't know that.
I mean, the timing is its own question. Sorry to interrupt you, Millie. But I think, like, tying back to the previous question where we were talking about all of these deployments and somewhere to consolidate things and something to focus on, I think in the longer run, and I don't know if that's a few months or a few years or more, it makes most sense to consolidate everything back to a single chain where that's SNX governed. I think there's probably a lot of, there's some like operational benefits, right? Like internalizing MEV and other transaction ordering, being able to ensure like maybe even some other things like prioritizing important transactions like Oracle updates or liquidations or stuff that we can't really do if we're not on if we're on like shared block space. Or I think there's just a lot of benefits, and like to piggyback on what Troy said, like some of the momentum we have potentially being, one of the pillars of the super chain, going back to the second or third question of being a DeFi blue chip. I think continuing to push forward in other things like super chain interoperability, maybe building apps that don't just live on Synthetix chain, but are all connected to Synthetix chain from other points in the super chain. I think it's a big innovation space, and I think like things changing, like OP Stack introducing a ZK prover doesn't necessarily like pull the rug out from under us. It's more something that we could just adopt along with others over time. And I think it is something that should be given a lot of consideration by governance. Like I said, I don't know if it's a few months or a few years, but it's something we should keep at the front of our minds.
Thanks for your thoughts, Fifa. Let's move on to Mithrandir. What's your take on Snax Chain's current status, and where do you think it's headed?
Yeah, so I think it's a fun governance thing for now with a lot of potential. Mostly I see it as an experiment. So I think it could be like a great staging area before we launch anything to a big chain. We could just do it like a testing area for experimentation, launch anything we want on Snax chain. We don't expect too many people to bridge just to test it. So it's just like some safe area we can test in public. And if we see people coming to try something new, then we know for sure it's good. So we can actually proceed with launching to Arbitrum or Optimism or whatever. But like, I feel like it has this very unique vibe. So we could use it as this experimentation L2 and something that's closely aligned with us. So yeah, so that's like my current position.
Appreciate your insights. Troy, what are your thoughts on Snax Chain, both now and moving forward?
Yeah, I think right now, one thing I don't think we've done is acknowledge like the massive amount of work that it took the few CCs that did like launch this and have it ready for the selection. So it's really cool to get to like actually use this on our own chain. When it comes to like the actual chain itself, like I tend to agree with people saying like, it's cool right now to use for governance. And that I don't think we should like rush into doing a whole lot of like market related or like trading related integrations on our own chain. And the reason why is that like Synthetix historically doesn't really control its own distribution. Like we put that in the hands of our integrators. So when it comes to like actually interfacing with our users, I actually think like engaging with our integrators like Quinta or TLX or DHedge or others, and like ensuring that we can actually reach their users, and we can reach those users where all of the like money and liquidity and activity actually is like the best option in like the short term. But like the other side of that is actually kind of I agree a lot with what Afif said, which is that like as we also kind of fragment our products across many of these chains, we end up in this situation where like we kind of dilute the ability to like have a central hub for where Synthetix actually does live, which historically was like mainnet and like kind of moved to optimism for cheaper like gas fees. And so we don't really have like a central place for like value capture or like distributing fees or that kind of thing. And like that's the kind of thing that like in the very short term I think would be like interesting mechanisms we could use the chain for, is to kind of be this like central hub for like distribution or like anything related to the like SNX token itself. But when it comes to markets, like in the short to medium term, I think we should really focus on keeping those like where there already exists a lot of activity and users.
Yeah, I think I'd like to echo a lot of this sentiment already discussed. Like in the short term, we have this governance kind of release where it's like a low monetary risk kind of social layer thing. As interop and superchain decentralizes over time, this is when we can look to make those kind of markets and have like actual trading activity and be the hub on Synthetix. I think we would want exactly like the token to be. We have an opportunity here for a fresh slate, not only like a rebrand in a way, but also like just removing a lot of technical debt. The SNX token predates ERC20, and it's just been a nightmare getting on bridges and integrating with other third parties and things that should be simple, right? So there's a lot of tech debt that comes with the old SNX token. I think we can think about the next phase of Snax Chain to be how do we end up migrating SNX, the token itself, to Snax Chain, remove this technical debt, kind of remove this kind of bearish token history, and how do we innovate and bring value capture and kind of interest back to the token? And I think Snax is a perfect opportunity to do that. And once we have that liquidity there, let's say all staking moves to Snax Chain, then we could start thinking about how we're going to use this liquidity to power what markets. And by that time, we'll have unlocked ideally super chain liquidity. So you can, let's say we have order book perps on top of perps v3, you commit an order on base or optimism and it settles on Snax Chain. So I think we can kind of tap into these liquidity sources that we don't have to be fragmented across, and we can use super chain native interop for between these optimism chains, and we could end up using wormhole or chainlink for sending messages to Arbitrum and Solana and other kind of like non-EVM standard deployments. It's Snax time, baby.
Thank you,
One
Matt.
thing I think one thing in the near term we could do on Snax Chain that would make sense would be like protocol issued loans against SNX. I'll be for that, but like any other activity that requires user onboarding, I would say it would be just such a big mistake to like try to like tackle that, because there's so much competitive like teams like trying to onboard people onto their L2s. Like we would be ridiculously mistaken to try to chase an OP grant just to bring people onto our own chain. We might as well just like, one good thing about Arbitrum is that like we're using like our native collateral and stuff that's native to Arbitrum. That's like there's a lot of liquidity there, and so we're tapping into these users that otherwise are like have dormant liquidity. And so I think that like it makes a lot of sense intuitively. But like competing with Arbitrum to bring people onto our own chain, competing with Base, competing with all the Blast, all these different L2s, is just like why would we do that, right? Like so I think like we should be very like calculated in what we do on like what chain, and like let's just wait a little bit. Like like L2 is just getting better and better every month, right? Like if we just the longer we wait, like the more opportunity there is. I guess there is like the grant aspect of it, but like yeah, like I would say like an interesting thing would be to do something like a protocol issued loans against SNX. That would probably be something that's feasible both in the short term and it would be bullish as well.
Yeah, and I think just want to echo like I kind of part to the base deployment question also, and other deployments like we and new markets and things like that. I think we tend to wait a little bit too long sometimes, and I think Snacks, like, the momentum is here. Like Moss said, like out of the past 3 years, like this is the most optimism, and kind of other integrators that we usually worked with are like asking us, oh, can we help you co-launch, and we're excited about this, and we're getting meetings, and we're excited about the liquidity layer on Superchain and blah blah blah. So I think we kind of continue with that momentum, and I think we'll be rewarded.
Thank you, Mev and Millie. Let's move on to Burt. What are your thoughts on SnaxChain, both now and looking ahead?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep this very brief, because what I'm really trying to do in my mind is not focus at all on SnaxChain. I think Meb's vision sounds great. I support CC's going down this path and really finding ways that we can bring value there. I think putting stakers there makes a lot of sense. But I think personally, for the next epoch, the focus should really be, especially for my expertise, on the product on Arbitrum and Base, and so I'm really not concerned so much about what's going on SnaxChain. I don't think we're very close to launching a Perps product there, nor do I think we should. I kind of agree with Millie there in terms of our focus. I want to make sure that we absolutely crush Arbitrum, and so that's where my head's at.
Well put, Burt. And finally, Duck, what are your thoughts on SnaxChain, both currently and in the future?
Yeah, I'm just gonna echo it over here. So governance in SnaxChain is a good first step. SnaxChain being the mothership for SNX staking and fee share collecting from all our deployments sounds optimal. Cross-chain liquidity and cross-chain trading across the superchain using cross-chain messaging is definitely an aspiring vision, and obviously if the tech is there to support it. So I'm fully on board with the vision.
Thank you, Duck. That brings us to the last question before moving into closing statements. The final question, what are some key changes you'd like to drive for Synthetix, and how will you go about this? This question is open to the group.
I think I can just repeat something that I've said a few times, which is that I would love to see, specifically on the council, I would love to see us to be outcome driven. And I think that's something that would result in really good outcomes for Synthetix itself. I think we have the talent, and we have the ability, and we have the liquidity, and we have the mind share, but I think we're primarily having some kind of coordination or some existential crises around actually where we should put our focus. So that's something how I would do this on the council is by just trying to keep everybody accountable on those kinds of these decisions. I think a lot of these decisions kind of get made a little haphazard, or the councilors act as a sort of green light for something that CCs are doing, and that's something I would like to see less of. We support the decisions with some data or information that we have, and some outcome that we can clearly state we're driving towards. And I think one of the other things that could help with that is improving and increasing the amount of actual technical protocol knowledge on the council. I don't want to simply act as some technical resource to the council like I have as a CC, but actually act as a source to educate the counselors to be asking kind of the hard questions about what impact we actually think these changes or these decisions will have, or how we can measure them, or where we can go and get this information, or how we can change certain settings or certain parameters within the protocol. I think the more of this knowledge that's actually internal to the body that is truly making the decisions, the better outcomes we'll start having.
I think one thing that I would mention that we've already kind of done internally is just the way we manage the technical teams, and just splitting giving some sort of hierarchy. I think for the past few epochs, we've had like a super flat organization, and there's been no a lack of kind of coordination and accountability, things of that nature. So I think within the past month or so, we've kind of designated a couple tech leaders, myself included, for just managing overall tech stuff by region. So we have Nikita in the east and me in the west, and having also the individual CCs take ownership of the projects that they are working on, because I think nobody wants to inherit something that they have to have this huge learning curve and kind of aren't interested in working on. We have a lot of like motivated, proactive autodidacts on this team, and I think giving them agency over what they're building really is kind of helping along and keeping people happy and just overall improving on like work ethic and things like that. So yeah, just a few technical, like also like deployments, improving deployment, Git hygiene. We have a lot of stuff in the pipe of just like kind of standardizing our development process and making it just better coordinated, and so that more people are across things and not blocked on things that other CCs could help them with. So that's just kind of my core purpose this epoch, is just to better coordinate the technical teams and give CCs kind of ownership over their projects.
Thank you, Meb. Any other thoughts before we move into closing statements?
Yeah, I just will say something really briefly. I want to see like one purpose v3 deployment go like do several consistent $100 million days, and then eventually $1 billion day, so that we don't have to have Beyond anymore and Vibe Elementals. But yeah, and I'm gonna affect that change by leading by example, by doing an integration on base. And I was kind of born out of like that. Like that's basically the reason I'm doing this integration, is to like, because I think there's this untapped market on base, and so yeah, I'm gonna make that happen.
Yeah, inspired by Troy's meme he posted just now. I think obviously I see a lot of this kind of from the integrator side, working with the Quenta guys, and I think one thing I would like to see is, as we move forward into this ARB deployment, let's make sure that end-to-end things are well tested, not just from the Synthetix side, but from the integrator side. I think there's a lot of kind of pressure from the community to get things shipped. And sometimes that pressure is a little bit at odds with things like working very reliably. So I definitely echo what Troy is saying. I think also, kind of from my perspective, there's been a lot of great changes coming from the Synthetix CCs. I want to call out Robin specifically and Caleb as people who have just really worked their asses off to make sure that Quenta's having their problems solved, and there's better coordination. So I think kind of continuing that from the governance side and making sure that like I've said before, how the decisions being made from the governance side are really coming down on the product itself, and like how they're being experienced from the end users is something that I would like to see continue. I think there's been some great progress made there. So thanks to those guys.
All right. Thank you, everybody. That brings us to closing statements. Just want to give everybody a chance to say share any final thoughts with the voters and community. Millie, we'll hear from you first.
Yeah, sure. I honestly have to say that I'm excited for what's to come, especially so if Donald Trump wins. I feel like, DeFi will get its day again. So yeah, hopefully Orange Man wins and DeFi does well. Otherwise, I think like regardless, Synthetix is in a good place. And yeah, I think like I'm really bullish on just like the community, on the vibes. There seems to be like a sense of like urgency in the community and among the CCs, which is really good to see. So yeah, I think like overall, like, it's been a really long journey since like 4 years ago, and I think Synthetix has matured a lot, still in startup mode, and really excited to see what happens over the next 6 to 12 months.
Thank you, Millie. Now let's turn to Troy. What final messages would you like to leave with the voters and community?
Yeah, I think I think I covered everything. Maybe I ramble or rant too much about it, but I don't want to. Yeah, so I don't have a whole lot else to cover here. Just I guess would like to say like like a vote for me is basically for being more results driven and more kind of technical and protocol knowledge on the council, with the context that I've also spent a lot of time either working on integrations or working directly with integrators. So I think that's a lot of good context that a counselor would have. And so yeah, I hope you'll vote for me. Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Connor, for organizing as well, for hosting.
Of course. Thank you, Troy. Mithrandir, any closing statements you would like to leave with voters before we wrap up?
Well, thanks everyone. I would say that the team is rejuvenated with a lot of new fresh faces, and me included, and I think the vibes are very good. This autumn should be shipping season, so I think we are in a very good place. Probably like listening to the others, it seems like the best team we had in some time. So I'm really happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to see how it unfolds.
Thank you, Mithrandir. Glad to have you. Burt, closing statements, please.
Yeah, I think no matter what happens this epic, we're all going to be in here just really trying to push this Arbitrum integration and make sure it's successful. A vote for SNXFrens is a vote for, of course, Lano and Pi's leadership. And I know that Lano is really going to look out for his priority, bringing value to stakers. And Pi really has some expertise with data that's very helpful in this. So I hope you guys have see some value in having a three-headed, six-legged council member on board. Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the end of the panel this evening. Thanks everybody for being here, especially those in the audience. We have some great candidates this epic, and certainly excited to see how it plays out. We will, as always, be posting this call on our YouTube for anyone who missed it. And just a reminder, voting has already begun and will close Sunday, September 15th at the totally normal time of 10:37 and 6 seconds p.m. UTC. So be sure to get your votes in before then. Thank you, everyone, for making the time to be here today, and best of luck to all the candidates. Thank you.